Welcome to the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast, Episode 3. I am Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Jordan Lehman. Jordan, how are you doing this fine evening?
Doing well. Had a good holiday. Excited to talk about some hoops. How was your holiday?
It was good. It's been relaxing, watching a lot of sports on TV, which is perfect. But really, just kind of chilling out and spending time with family, and that's what it's all about. So that's
right.
What we've been doing. One thing that you and I talked about before was potentially moving all these videos over to the Blackhawk TV page, and I think that's a good idea. So you'll be able to find the first two and this episode on our Western Wisconsin Sports podcast page, but we'll also be uploading them more permanently to the Blackhawk TV pages. It's all just one kind of big thing that we do. This just focuses more on the state of the western part of the state in sports, and really at this time of year focuses more on boys basketball. So look for the videos over there. Subscribe to that channel, and we'll keep pumping out the content.
Yeah, perfect. So getting right to the point, talking about the middle border. Is Prescott back? Is that just a given now that they're going to be Prescott every year?
Say that one more time. Is Prescott back? They're going to be Prescott?
Right. Should we just mark it down? Top three in the conference. They'll find some freshmen, some sophomore.
That's a good question. When Mark Miller does his preview, and he gets input from people around the state, and then a lot of times, as a coach, you're asked who the best, to rank the teams in your conference. Like we've talked about, and like we talked to Coach Johnson about, losing 70 points, 4 starters, like 6 of your top.
It's crazy.
The reality is that you can't just replace experience with more experience. If you lose it all, they're gone. So the fact that the coaches still believe that they would win the conference, I think is a testament to how good they're going to be year in and year out. Yeah, I mean, at this point, is there any reason to believe that they're not a top 3 team every single season?
Right. And like you said, the coaches having you, for example, and then other coaches in the conference just having so much experience with Coach Johnson and his program being successful, it makes sense to vote them as the, preseason favorite. But I don't know how many coaches knew who Dallas Wallen was. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, we were familiar with Jordan Malvolov because we watched him as an 8th grader in our middle school tournament. And so, I think there's probably a lot of people that knew about him. I don't know that this was a surprise to people that were really informed about that program. He started the first game, or played a ton in the first game. So he's been a stud. I mean, their last game, they had who I can't even think of who they played.
They just played Glenwood, but.
Yeah, the game before that.
Okay.
So they had the Malvolov and Wallen combined to score 60 of 78 points. So
yeah, they beat Ellsworth at Prescott. And Ellsworth, we've seen them in person. They're a very good team. Got some studs. Yeah. So Malvolov had 37. Wallen had 23.
Yep.
Malvolov had 8 boards and 8 assists. So he was close to a triple-double. I mean, Wallen right now averages 16.5 points and 7.5 boards as a freshman.
Yeah, he'll be a double-double guy for sure this year.
Right. I mean,
but he's a stud defender too.
Right.
So I mean, they're going to be good. But I still think, based on what we've seen from the other teams in the conference, they're Prescott's top 3, but I don't think that we're ready to just say, well, they're going to run away with the conference.
No. And that kind of segues into, I was going to say, Isner Richmond, I've watched them play one game, and that was the St. Croix Central game. And that was St. Clair Central had their way in probably every facet of the game. It was 65-22 at halftime, something like that. So on the other hand, Richmond is also beaten up on Amory. Amory's not a program that's excelling. Like we know what makes New Richmond go. CJ makes New Richmond go. His scoring ability, and just his length as a player, his skill. But like for teams like even like Baldwin Woodville, teams like Ellsworth, Prescott, is that a winnable game? Maybe for Prescott, that's probably a confident game for Prescott. But even for teams maybe in the bottom half right now, if you can shut down CJ, what does New Richmond do?
And I think that's the big question, because their last game was last Tuesday, and they got beat by 27 by Chippewa.
Right.
And so CJ Campbell, 9 for 24 from the field, ended up with 23. That's not super efficient. 6 boards, 6 turnovers, no assists. So that type of ball, there's going to be games where CJ single-handedly probably leads them to victory. But looking at that simply at the results of that game, where your second leading scorer has 6, that's not going to be real conducive to winning games in any conference. And I think there, like I said, there's going to be games where CJ Campbell's just straight up too good, and making shots from too far away and from too close, that teams just aren't going to be able to slow him down. But I think, was Chippewa's game plan like let CJ get his, and then shut down everybody else? That appears to be pretty effective. Central just got all up in their grill and just turned them over repeatedly. And so I still think, New Richmond's going to have a game. Mason Anderson and CJ that's going to be fun.
Right.
And at that point, whose supporting cast is better? And I think that's the thing that New Richmond's going to have to kind of figure that out. But at the same time, they were one of the last teams to start practicing. So it's early season everywhere in a weird season, but it's especially early there. And I think that's just going to take time. It's a new coach, probably a new system, a lot of new guys. When you take away Studeman and Kidder, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I think New Richmond will be okay, but there's just stuff that obviously they're going to have to figure out to compete with the best teams in the area, because they'll play a harder schedule. Obviously they have to, because they're going to be in a much higher region than most teams in this area, and especially in the middle border.
Yeah, this Saturday, Prescott goes to New Rich, and that's a huge game for both teams. That'll be very telling, because Prescott, they've got, I would say, a handful of good defenders. Wallen might be their best defender. But at the same time, it'll be interesting to see what Coach Johnson, what his game plan is. I don't have a ton of experience with the whole philosophy of let the stud get theirs and then we'll shut everybody else off. But how do you see that game playing out? From your experience as a head coach, what's your, if you've got Prescott's roster, what's your ideas?
Well, I think it's tough because like we talked about, Prescott's inexperienced. So you're going to have games where they are absolutely unbelievable, like against Mondovi. And then you're going to have games like Osceola where they struggle to make shots. I think what they might – Prescott's run some zone in the past. It wouldn't shock me to see them throw some different defenses at them to see how CJ handles that. He's the ball dominant player on that team. And asking a freshman at this point in his career to try to guard him for a significant amount of time is probably pretty difficult. But I would guess just to throw stuff at New Richmond, throw some man at him, throw some zone at him, just to kind of keep them guessing, and try to run. I think, team wise, I think there's a lot of things that Prescott does better. And so I think the more possessions is probably going to be the benefit of Prescott. But at any time, if CJ Campbell starts making a whole bunch of shots, it's not going to matter what you do. And I think that's, we saw that once in our gym last year where he, had I don't know if he had 34, and it's just, it comes in spurts, and it's like it's bleeding that you can't stop. And, he couldn't be the focus from a defensive standpoint last year when Kidder and Studeman were also both very good players. So it'll be interesting. And I think a lot of this early season stuff it's like a boxing match where you come out and you just kind of have to feel out your opponent. And like Coach Campbell said in our first meeting or our first episode, you don't know who's healthy. You don't know how many practices he's got in. You don't know how many practices the team's got in. All you can really go on is what you see, in a live stream or potentially in a box score. So Saturday will definitely be fun. But even before that, tomorrow, Tuesday, so this probably will be posted till Wednesday morning. So we'll probably have results for Nourishment River Falls, where that'll give us a little bit more of an idea of how good of a team Nourishment is. Right.
Yeah. River's a team that, River Falls, we talked to Coach Campbell. It's, pretty well known that they're stacked. They did just lose their first game. Who was that against?
Memorial.
Yeah, Memorial. And Coach Campbell kind of talked about it, like in a conference like the Big Rivers, there's no true like pushover. It's just a bunch of good coaches, a bunch of great athletes. The Eau Claire and Greater Eau Claire area has always had really, really good athletes, and whether they go to Memorial or go to North, sometimes it's a matter of zip code, whatever. But they play. Do they play? They play New Richmond, and then I don't know if they play. Do they play any other middle border crossovers this year?
River Falls. So
yeah,
they play Central.
They do. So they do play St. Central. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, the games that are probably happened last night, based on when you watch this. If you watched it when we posted on Wednesday morning, all non-conference: Glenwood, Somerset, Osceola, Rice Lake, BW at St. Croix Falls, and Nourishment at River Falls. The head of the class right now in the middle border, St. Croix Central.
Right.
And so, what they've done is running clocked pretty much everybody they played, beat the brakes off New Richmond. And that game against River Falls is going to be interesting because, and I've used that word a lot so far in these 10 minutes we've been recording, but it's the truth because there's not an answer height-wise to play with River Falls' Twin Towers. And while Central is a bigger team from a middle border perspective, Hinsman's is a big dude, but he's a big post player, and there's one of him. And Helson is a solid basketball player, but he's 6'2", 6'3", and Pettit's probably around the same height. 6'9" is tall, and Zach Johnson's a stud. So that's the game that I'm looking forward to. You got my hopes up when you told me that it was Christmas Eve.
I know.
And then it turned out it's the following week. So that's they've been, what Central's done right now is only surprising from a perspective that it's been so convincing.
Right.
Like, I don't know that anybody would have been shocked to hear that at this point this is their record. But when you are beating New Richmond by 50 and drop 100 on them, when you're running clock or getting running clock on the Ellsworths, and that to me is like, okay, I knew they'd be good, but I didn't know that they would be this good. And what we say, they're ranked 7th right now in the latest coaches poll. Mm-hmm. That to me is selling them short, because I think that they can play with just about every D3 team. And there's obviously some really, really good ones. But as far as what we're focused on on this podcast in this area of the state, um, it's right now they've got to be the favorite to come out of the north, and Altoona's got to be the favorite to come out of the south, and that to me is great. I love watching the middle border win basketball games. I liked it less when I was the guy coaching against the middle border team winning the basketball games. But when it's the middle border against anybody else, you love to see the success because it's the teams that you prepare for and the teams that you compete against. And like last year, I mean, watching Prescott make it to where they did after beating Somerset in a really close game. I mean, we went to Somerset and beat Somerset. So it validates some of the things that you do in your program and in this area when you can have any sort of success that then we get to see at the state level. And we've had that with Prescott. In football, we've had it with a lot of middle border teams. We just haven't had that sort of success in this conference for a really long time, basketball-wise, since I want to say, like, since Prescott made it, was it Osceola, Duran in the early 2000s? I don't know that anybody else has made it from the middle border. So that to me is just like that's the fun part of being a basketball fan is cheering for the teams that you get to watch, and then seeing them have success on the state level.
Yeah, I think about like St. Croix Central, us playing them in the regional semis last year, seeing how they played in that game. There were some things that they did well in that game that we didn't really anticipate them doing as well. There were some players that made threes, but there were also some players in that game, like Hackbarth, who made a ton of shots that this year have come in stride making those shots every game. Right. They average 85 points a game. They've made 51 threes through 6 games. They've stolen the ball 104 times. They have 133 assists as a team. Like the distribution of points is spread pretty evenly. I mean, Pettit's, their leading scorer, and on paper you might think he's their best player. But I mean, if the game is as long as a college game or an NBA game, Seiler probably averages a triple-double. And then you've got just a high school athlete in Hinsman that it's impossible to replicate him in the gym on a scout level. So boxing him out, it's borderline impossible. His basketball skill and those kind of things, maybe not out of this world, but I think with River Falls, like, to just preview that game, if Central can turn them over with the havoc press that Central's been using, River Falls is in trouble, because I know that, Coach Campbell talked about the Doherty brothers and that they're a little bit more skilled from the outside. So maybe they're going to be able to attack that press. And I know that we pressed Zach Johnson last year, but I mean, I think we're both humble enough to say that the level at which Central's playing defense right now, I don't know if I've ever seen it in the conference, at least in my recent memory. I have, 10 plus years less watching it than you do, but you can't, your average margin of victory right now for Central's above 30. Their closest game was against a Northwestern team that is a favorite to take the heart of the North. That's as deep a team, Division III, that we've had in this area for a long time, long time.
Yeah, I don't think that's inaccurate, but I do think that what we see when they play River Falls will be a good barometer,
right,
as far as how good this team will be against the best teams, and we'll get to see that with how good is Northwestern early in the season. That's a thing that I watched most of that game, and Hinsman was out of it with foul trouble early, but I don't know that Central had really hit their stride yet at that point. And so this year is going to be just really hard to assess from that perspective. The kids that they have, mostly seniors, and then Hinsman and Hackbarth being juniors, those seniors have been playing ball together for a long time, and playing football together and having success in a lot of sports together for an extended period of time, and that helps. So I think they're the favorites. I'll say that in probably the conference and the region, but you gotta show up every night. And as much as they hit shots against us in the regional semis, they turned around and I don't think made a 3 in the regional final. So they returned most of their dudes aside from Kopaz. They have experience in big games, and they have experience getting to that point. And a lot of those kids played the prior year too when they I believe pushed Prescott to the brink. So I think there's a lot of good going on right now over there, but they're not going to just rest on it. They're going to continue to work hard and press teams and make teams work, and it'll be fun to see what River Falls does. Let's take a quick spin now around the rest of the area. You talked a little Heart of the North. We've seen Barron have success this year. We'll actually talk to Coach Baumgard here later in the episode. You talked about Northwestern being a favorite, so we'll get a little more in depth on the Heart of the North here shortly. We talked Big Rivers. River Falls is ranked 4th on the latest coaches poll. They did have that loss, and that's what's happened to Big Rivers. The Dunn St. Croix right now, the best team is probably Durand, and they're ranked 8th at D4, and they just knocked off Fall Creek. I want to say recently. I guess I didn't look at the data on that. And Fall Creek has been playing really well. So that's
Fall Creek ranked 6th.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Do you have a date on when Durand beat them?
It was the 21st, a week ago.
Okay, so that'll be about as far as east as we'll talk about things. But Durand has been a team that was in the middle border up until probably 10 years ago or so, and has had success. The last team, or the last conference that we're gonna talk about here is the Lakeland. So we'll talk about Clear Lake here. Clear Lake's had a ton of success in the recent history, and we'll get more in depth on some of that here shortly. But right now, ranked 7th in Division 5, 5-0 to start the season. Have a little bit of a break now before they go to Luck. But we will talk to Coach Jason Sargent here momentarily. Anything you want to say quick before we take a break and get him on?
No, I mean, it's exciting. Clear Lake's one of those schools, one of those programs that has cemented themselves as a staple. I mean, the last 5 years, they've lost one conference game. They haven't lost a conference game in 3.5, 4-ish years. And, Division 5 basketball, I mean, smaller schools, it's still a ton of fun to watch. It's still loaded with talent. They had a team 2 years ago that I got to see in person with Blanchard, Marshall Kane, Hacker, that they ended up losing in the sectional final, but it was one of the most put together teams that I've seen in recent memory. And that team went to state as juniors. So it'll be exciting to talk to Coach Sargent. I'm sure he's got a lot of intel on those runs and getting the inside scoop on Clear Lake basketball.
All right, we will get Coach Sargent in here. Okay, welcome back to the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, joined again by Jordan Lehman, and we are joined by Clear Lake head basketball coach Jason Sargent. Coach Sargent, how are you this evening?
Doing very good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, we've obviously down the road a little bit in Baldwin and Woodville have got to see from afar some of the success that Clear Lake has had, and over the last handful of years. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jordan. He's gonna kick it off with a couple questions, and then we'll keep it rolling.
That sounds great.
Yeah, good to meet you, Coach Sargent. I definitely have been a big fan of just watching your guys play ball the last 5 or so years. My dad's from Prairie Farm, so I've been in and around Clear Lake my whole life, and watched a lot of basketball around there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun watching your kids play these last 5 years, since I've kind of been watching them. How are things right now? How's Clear Lake basketball doing? And as 2020 comes to a close, and how have your guys kind of handled the COVID stuff and this early season?
Yeah, it's been quite a process. I think the kids are handling it better than maybe I thought, or maybe than actually I am. I think I'm getting better. Playing with the mask and practice with masks has certainly caused some challenges for everybody, but the kids have just accepted it, and we're moving forward. I think the biggest thing for me is just coming into the season not where we normally are. You can tell that we didn't have our normal summer leagues. We didn't have our tournaments that we go to. We weren't able to do the open gym and have our some structured time in the summer. And it definitely, we came in a lot more rusty than we normally would be. And just a lot of things that we normally automatically already know weren't there at the start of the season. So, we got through, this Christmas stretch here, and a lot of work to do, but a lot of good signs. And I think we've got some things finally starting to click a little bit, but then we got the break now. So we had practice this morning. We got practice for a couple of days and putting some new things in. So we're excited to kind of move into 2021.
That's exciting. Being 5-0, coming off a couple, a number of conference championships now. What's the confidence level of the kids, and kind of what are their goals this year? Have the upperclassmen or kind of the more experienced players, have they kind of stepped up in leadership roles?
Yeah, we talked about the fact that leadership was going to be big, especially we had a fairly large senior class last year, and lost in the regional final at McDonald, and so that was a tough loss. We're trying to win our Third Street regional championship at that point, and so when that goal didn't happen, we had to regroup, and the seniors kind of passed the torch down to this kind of a younger group, I guess. And the seniors have responded well. Unfortunately, like I said, we didn't get that off-season development, but I think for the most part, the kids are kind of taking pride in trying to win a 5th straight conference championship, which is awesome. It's a pretty unique thing. I think we have an opportunity to do. They want to get back to the regional final certainly, and have a chance to get that streak started again. And I think the success has really helped like you said, the last 4 years. Give the kids a direction and a focus, and so the goals have kind of fallen into their own. I mean, we want to win another conference championship and to keep that going, and like I said, get back to the regional. And we played in three state sectionals and 2 back-to-back sectional finals, so the kids saw that atmosphere and want to be part of that and kind of carry on that tradition. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah. Having another Blanchard, I'm saying that correctly, right? Blanchard?
Yes.
Having Tyson come up now, obviously, Bailey was a staple for Clear Lake basketball for a while. How is Tyson, filled? I see kind of the box scores. He's scoring quite a bit for you now, and rebounding and spreading the ball around. How have him and maybe, Riley Peterson stepped up as leaders and as, primary ball handlers, primary scorers for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, they knew that they were going to have to step up and be leaders in those regards. Like you said, scoring and rebounding for first and foremost. And they've done a good job with that. Tyson was able to play as a freshman when his brother Bailey was a senior, and he had a totally different role. He had all these weapons around him. And, he had always kind of played up. When he was in 4th grade, he was playing up 5th and 6th and so on and so forth. So he was kind of learned how to be a really good ball handler and just kind of take control and feed people the ball and get a lot of assists. And so that was kind of his primary role. And so last year that changed. And now this year, it's more, I've got to think to score first. And so that was a kind of a progression that started last year and has really carried into this year. and we talked, and he had to take on more of a scoring role, but he's still a really, really good passer. And I think in the back of his mind, he still would really rather throw a really on-point pass to set up somebody for a nice, easy shot. But he's also stepped up, and he's taken a lot more shots this year than he normally had, and we need him to do that. And so I'm excited to see that progress through the new year.
Right. Looking back at some of those seasons that you had, thinking about names like, obviously Bailey, think of last names like Hacker, Kane, Bad Horse. What was it like going on that run with those kids? And, how many memories, did you make? And, winning all those games, it must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's, we're on a 43 game win streak at home. And that's another one of the goals that the kids talk about, in pregame. Whenever we have a home game, they don't want to lose a game at home. It's just, we've kind of taken that, we don't lose at home kind of attitude, and the kids have kind of carried that on. And certainly, like you said, Marshall and Bailey and Bad Horse, all those guys, started that and got that role, and then it's fun, and streaks are made to be broken, and we know that. And the conference championship streak, with success comes a price. You have a big X on your back. Every team wants to knock you off, and so you can't have a bad night, and it's hard to go when it's a long season to stay focused game by game. But the boys, we really take that mindset, that just focus, don't look ahead, one game at a time, and it's hard in high school for kids to do that. But these guys have done a tremendous job over the years, and I think that has started, like you said, way back 5 years ago, when Blanchard and Kane and Hacker, when those guys were playing as freshmen, and we're pretty green, and we're able to get things rolling. And now we're just trying to carry that on. And I think it kind of breeds that environment where that's the expectation. And so it's sure been fun. We go back now and watch some old games, and, especially weird now with no fans, or limited fans, I should say. So, you watch a regional final game or a sectional game, and what that atmosphere is like. And we talked a lot about that early on in the season, that there's just that energy level isn't there in the stands. So we have to create our own energy. We have to focus just on that and try not to be distracted by the silence, which is kind of a weird concept. But it's tough, especially when we play a lot of doubleheaders. So you play a game at 5:45, and there's not much to happen in the gym. So we're battling through that. I think everybody is, but we just have to try to focus on what we can control, and just work hard, no matter if it's a packed gym or if there's 10 people in there. And so it's different, but I think the kids are doing a pretty good job with it.
Have you noticed? I'm just gonna ask one quick, Jordan. Have you noticed in these 5 games this year with no fans or limited fans, that you as a coach have a little bit more input on what's going on the floor? Like, is that, because I think back to we were good my senior year in Baldwin Woodville, and when it got to the games where the gym was really, really full, Scott could have been 5 feet from us, and you weren't going to hear what he was saying. So much of what happened on the floor was dictated by what the players were doing, and now you can be heard by all your players at any time. Is that a real thing, or is it maybe being overemphasized because I'm thinking about it?
No, matter of fact, 5 years ago, we had to go back and, I should say 4 years ago, when we made the first long tournament run, and realized that, we weren't used to the real big packed gyms, and they were used to relying on my voice and calling things out, helping them on defensive end, switching, trapping, hedging, all that kind of stuff. And, so we had to go to a lot of hand signals and learn that. And so we had kind of started to do that, but we really preach and practice about how loud they have to communicate on screens. And the guards, I really hold my guards to a high level. They're the coach on the floor. They need to take charge, because, like you said, when they're on the opposite floor, or even they're on the same end when it's a loud gym, they're not able to hear me all the time. So this year, yeah, it's totally different, where they can hear everything. Sometimes that's good and bad, but it is easier for me to communicate with them. But we're still trying to plan for, that maybe eventually we'll have fans at the end of January and into February. and hopefully get some bigger crowds and try to work on those nonverbal and just more hand gestures for communicating. But still, they have to, one of the frustrating things is, we like to trap ball screens as one of our things that we would try to make as a staple. And, they have to communicate that, and they have to make sure that the whole team has to know, so that we're in position to get the guy rolling to the basket and overplay to the ball side, things like that. So we really harp about the communication piece, and it's easier for them now, but it has been a progression to try to work towards really being loud and communicating on the court.
Thinking back to, Billy Blanchard was a player that I, when I started following you guys, I kind of stuck out. He scored a lot real early in his career. I'm not sure what the total number was for him for his career, but I'm sure it was well over 1,000. What were some things that made him special, and what made that kind of experience as being his coach special?
Yeah, who was the player that kind of cut out on me? Sorry.
Bailey Blanchard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bailey, Bailey was a 4-year starter for us. We started that group. His dad, Ryan, was a longtime assistant with me for 16, 17 years. And now he's the head coach of the girls. But, we started that group in kindergarten and did the little dribblers with them, K through 2. And then, we kind of coached that group specifically, through all the way up. And, tailored a lot of things around to his strengths, and he just got better and better. His range extended. The sectional final game that we lost in Osseo, he was hitting, to bring us back. We cut it to 3 points, I think, with just over 2 minutes to go after digging a big hole. He was hitting long range 3-point shots, and early on it was more inside. Everything was inside with him. He was one of our better post players with Marshall Kane, and then his range extended, and so he just became that more difficult to defend. They put a big on him because they thought he was going to post up, and then we'd bring him outside and he'd be able to get by. And if he had a smaller, quicker guy, then we could post him up and ISO him that way. So, yeah, he was a special player for us, and did a great job being able to score really in any scenario. Whether it was inside out, mid range, which was pretty awesome to be a part of, and to watch him grow and progress throughout the years, and go back and watch old film, and some of the post moves he had were just real patient and methodical, and he was able to really break down his defender. And then he would get double lot, and he would be able to find the open guy and kick out, and that's where Damon Badhorse had a lot of his success on kickouts, and I think he led the entire state with his 3-point percentage his senior year when we did make it to state. So, that just made us so much more difficult to defend. So they're real smart players, really knew their role. But Bailey, just from the offensive standpoint, yeah, I can't remember what his number was now. I feel bad about that. But, around 1,500 points in his career. So it was pretty awesome.
He's playing definitely still, right? Bailey's playing. Is he at River Falls?
Yes, he is playing at River Falls. I don't know. They were making some decisions. I don't know what they decided about games. I know they were maybe putting like a 12-game limit or something like that, but I hadn't heard now since the break what actually is happening.
So you mentioned there that you've been coaching basketball for a while. We first crossed paths a long time ago when you were the football coach. You had Matt O'Connell, who was a phenomenal football player. Yeah. I was the head coach for 11 years and basketball at the same time, so that was a lot. But yeah, Matt was I think 2007. Yeah, was his freshman year, and he was a pretty gifted player. We did run the triple option and really catered to his strengths, and he was just so smart too. He went on and had a great career at St. Thomas, and they played in the national championship game for D3 his sophomore year, I believe. But he was so smart and was able to help guys be better on the field, and he drew so much attention. He was very unselfish. He could have had a lot more yards. He had 10,000 all-purpose. I think he still leads the entire state in all divisions with all-purpose yards, and he could have had a lot more. But he was unselfish. He would make a pull and
past our little bubble screens outside, even though he could have tucked it and ran. Many of those games, we were fortunate to have big leads at halftime, so the offense first string would go out, play one series in the third quarter, and then they wouldn't play any more offense. So his numbers could have been a lot higher. But yeah, what a tremendous quarterback he was and a player for us.
So you, how many years was it that you coached both sports?
So I coached 9 years was both. I spent 2 years as AD, and then I was done with football and just went back to basketball. So yeah, this is my 20th year for basketball.
So that's quite a run to do a lot of things. Like I think back to the grind of November to March, and if you add August to November on top of that, I'm surprised you have hair.
Yeah, well, you can see it's turning colors a little bit there, but yeah, thankful to have hair yet. Yeah, I mean, really, it was it was pretty much right after the football clinic. Come back a little bit of spring season, and then the weight room stuff and open gyms and leagues and all started in June, and it was a blur from June to March pretty much. But
Yeah.
you gotta love doing it, and very fortunate to be part of some great seasons and have some really great kids around us and great help with coaches, and so it was a fun ride.
Got anything, Jordan?
No, I'm good. Anything for you, Coach Nygaard?
No, I just, it's being up the road a little bit, and we got to communicate a little bit, trying to organize some basketball stuff in the summer, and knowing that Clear Lake was always very successful. I'm frozen on my screen, so I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but
Yep, I can hear you.
good. So just being able to watch that, we played in the same summer league over at Hammond when Bailey was going to be a senior, I think it was. And knowing just how good that team was going to be. And for me, obviously it's summer ball, but it was like, let's as a barometer, see what kind of team we are and who can guard certain players. And I don't think we ever kept it within single, it was always double digits or more. But for me, it was just neat that, we don't get to go play Clear Lake, but when we can turn on the TV in March and watch a game, that to me, and that's why we're doing this podcast, is because we don't get a lot of attention over here. I don't feel like, La Crosse gets some attention, Eau Claire gets attention, and then it's all the eastern side of the state, and really nothing from over here. And so, the 43-game home winning streak, going for 5 straight conference titles, like all of that stuff are the reasons that we want to continue to do things like this, to celebrate teams that are having success in our area.
Yeah, I would agree. It is tough and sometimes frustrating. We don't seem to get the recognition and just any kind of hype or whatever. And so we knew that going into seasons years ago, and the boys were always worried about rankings and stuff like that. And I said, you know what, your play is gonna eventually get you that recognition. And so this year we lost a lot. And we were in the preseason rankings and stuff, and the kids were all hyped about that. And I said, yeah, that all comes with the price now. That X is on your back. Like you can't take one game off. I said, you lose one game now and you're going to be wiped right off from that rankings, which doesn't mean anything necessarily, but the kids like that, and it's nice to get some recognition for our area too, and so I really appreciate you having me on. I mean, this is great. I think we need more of this kind of stuff. The kids work hard. It doesn't matter if they're in the north part of the state, the southern part of the state, or where they're at. Some of these kids put a lot of time in, and have high goals, and there's only a few teams that actually make it, and that's why it's so fragile, and that's what makes it so awesome to be a part of. And you got to just get through the lows and try to celebrate the highs, but you got to keep going too. You can't stop and look back. You got to keep looking forward, and sometimes it's hard to enjoy the ride, because it's such a grind, and you got to keep looking forward. You can't look back. But like I said, it's hard not to go back and watch some past games and not be in awe of some of the things that some of these kids did, because it was a pretty good stretch, and they really did some great things for our Clear Lake program.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Coach. We'll try to check back in with you later in the season to see how things are going, if things have kind of got more normal or if we're still masked and fanless. But good luck on the remainder of your season and continuing all those streaks you got going on.
Well, really appreciate the time, and really thanks for having me. And I think you guys are doing a great job with this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Welcome back to the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Jordan Lehman. Thanks to Coach Sargent for jumping on, and we will now transition to our next guest of the night of Barron High School, Coach Kai Baumgard. How are you doing this afternoon?
Doing really well. Doing well, Jeremy.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We're just going to talk to you for a little bit here, talk about Barron basketball, kind of a resurgence that we're seeing early in the season, and then a lot of other things that you're going through, we're all going through in late 2020.
Certainly. Be fun.
Yeah, Coach, it's good to see you. What are things like in and around Barron basketball right now? How's it going?
Actually, it's our numbers are a little bit lower this year than they have in the past. We graduated about 8 seniors last year, and we only brought in like 2 to 3 freshmen. So we knew we were going to struggle a little bit. So our numbers are, about 17, 18 kids, depending on who all shows up. So which is a lot lower than we've had in the past. So we're finding ways to make 2 levels work because kids need to be able to play. And we actually, instead of doing a JV season, we moved them down to the C team so some of the younger kids could be able to play with the same skill level. But varsity-wise, I'm really excited. We have 7, 8 guys on the team, a little low numbers, but a lot of guys that can handle the basketball, make good decisions, and we shoot the ball pretty well from outside, so that helps. We also have a really good senior, Carter Liberty, who has been with us for 4 years, and he's really blossomed this year. He's averaging about 22 points a game, shoots a little over 56% from the field. He goes inside, outside, so he helps us a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know watching the Liberty brothers last year, even the younger one coming on late in the season, even when we went to your place for the regular season game, they play with a ton of energy. It must be fun having a guy like Carter being an older player, upperclassman. Has he kind of stepped into that leadership role?
By far, he stepped into that. He started to get into it even as a junior. I love it because this is about my 29th year of coaching, and Carter would come up to me like in the beginning of September, and he goes, "Coach, can we talk about my goals?" I said, "Sure." We usually do that a little bit closer to the season, but yeah, we could do that. And this year with the pandemic, and he's really smart. He's taken some college classes too, so he had some free time, and it met one of my preps. So we went up to the football field and we just sat and talked. And he had individual goals, he had team goals, and it was even cool. He had goals for him and I, how we can continue to build our relationship. And that's just the maturity that Carter has.
Yeah, he plays with an energy. I know me and Coach Nygaard, we would try to replicate that preparing for you guys last year, and it was impossible because he's so active both on offense and defense. So, Nygaard, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was just going to mention that, having watched him, because my first year coaching was his freshman season, and it was like, okay, that they got a freshman kid that's going to be pretty good here. And then you saw him take that step between his freshman and sophomore year, where it was like there's a lot of things that he would do, but the energy was more like bull in a china shop as a sophomore. And then as a junior when we went up, because we saw you guys 3 times last year, in the scrimmage, it was like, okay, if he makes an effort to just do well what he does really well, he's going to be a problem. And then in the regular season, it was his little brother that gave us fits. And it's like, okay, if they're both firing on all cylinders, they're going to be a problem for us. And I was hoping, having to face those 2 and then looking down and seeing you, because you've always got a ton out of your guys. I was hoping to walk out of the seating meeting not playing Barron. Fortunately for us, Big Brother got in some foul trouble early in that playoff game, which we kind of got on a roll after that. but just the two of them together, then you got some decent guards as well. Like when Jordan and I left the gym that night, we're like, that team's going to be a problem for teams next year because you lost a number of guys, but your main players were all going to come back, and I think that's what we're starting to see this year.
Yep, I agree with you. Kind of go back with Carter, his 9th and 10th grade. He'll tell you, we butted heads a lot because I wanted him to be more efficient with his offense, and he was at a stage where, when he was playing through youth, he was kind of the guy a lot, and so he would try to take over a lot and maybe force shots and into 2 to 3 different people playing D on him and forcing things. And we really talked about you can't do that. You got to trust your teammates to kicking them out. And this year he's making great decisions, knowing when to really pound the ball inside and finish with his footwork, and he can finish really well in the post. And he's getting really good at, and he's strong enough to kick that opposite diagonal pass, and then we can play out of that, whether it's attacking the closeout or doing one more pass and hitting that corner shot. He's making the players better because he's gaining a lot more attention. And we talked about that. You can't win games all by yourself. You've got to be able to get your teammates the ball where they can succeed. And that's really clicking for him this year. And with his younger brother, Caden, in fact, I think that when you came to our place for that first game last year, that was his first game that he started. He found out maybe 30 minutes before game time that he was going to start because we had somebody that came down with an injury. And he came out and he played really well against us. He shined that night.
Yeah, he did, for sure. Because he had played a little in the JV game. And it was, he was a freshman that played well, and you take notice of those guys. And then when he was announced as a starter, because we knew you had a kid, I think with an ankle injury that was maybe going to play or not going to play, and he comes jogging out. We didn't know who that fifth starter would be, and usually I try to give guys their matchups the night before so they can potentially watch him on film or whatever. And so he came out as kind of the fifth guy, and we just weren't prepared for him to do what he had done. And that, as a fan of basketball, it's always neat to watch kids in that situation kind of rise to the occasion. Unfortunately, it was one of those things that we were like, what are we going to do? Because once you get rolling, it's hard to get it rolling the other way. Has he gotten bigger? His brother's a big dude. Is Caden growing, or how big is he now?
Height-wise, I think we put him at about maybe 5'9", 5'10"-ish. Both him and Carter, because of their father, who's really into lifting weights and developing their athletes. He does some private stuff with some of our kids at our school now. But Carter and Caden, they are so thick and so strong now. Where we got to work with Caden a little bit is that sometimes he doesn't look for himself. And we're trying to get him to be more assertive, even though he's only a sophomore. I already told him, I said, you've been on varsity 1 year already. You got to go after it. Don't take a back seat to anybody. And, he's one of those kids where sometimes we have to tell him he's got to shoot more, and which is a good thing. Usually it's the other way around. He gets it, but he's really hard on himself, and he's got to be perfect. So when he misses a couple of shots, he doesn't like to look at the room again. So we always got to remind him periodically.
You said you've been coaching now. This is year 29. Have you had a lot of times where you've had brothers playing with each other? Because
maybe, yeah. When I was in Shell Lake, yes, but not in Barron. No, I haven't.
Because I'm thinking of I
take that back. I had the Williamsons brothers. I had there were 4 of them. There was Warren. He was the oldest, and then they had twins, Austin and Andrew, who graduated last year. And now the youngest one is Aaron this year. But that would be the only times that I can remember.
Do you notice, though, that younger brothers tend to defer while playing with their older brothers? Because I think back in the Baldwin era, since I graduated, when we had both Helens, it took a while for Marcus to kind of come out of his shell. It was when Travis got hurt his senior year that Marcus, as a sophomore, then realized, okay, now I can be more assertive because I don't have to defer. So you might get to see him come out of his shell a little bit more next year, it'd be nice if he just continued to develop, and do what he's capable of doing here as a sophomore.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. Yes, I have noticed that. And those are conversations we try to take. But Carter's also pretty strong in that family, and Caden listens to him pretty well.
I can imagine that. I'm going to ask another one here too. So you have your son on the team. This is his second full year varsity. He played a little bit the year before that, if I recall correctly.
As a ninth grader, just a few. Yep, about half the season.
How does that go? I mean, obviously he's probably riding home with you, or you get to be dad, but you also get to be his head coach. How's that?
Yep. I do have some experience with this because my dad, who's retired now, he's about 90 years old, but he coached for 31 years, and I played under him. And so I can remember some of those long car ride home where it was awful quiet, or we had a lot of discussions. And so this year might have been the best year for Sam because he's old enough to drive now, and he drives his own car. So it makes the after games a little bit easier. But we do try to separate dad and coach as best as we possibly can. But in the same sentence, I mean, he's a Baumgard. We love sports. So, we love watching sports. We love talking about sports as much as possible. I do know that, subconsciously, I'm harder on him than probably any other kid that I have on my team. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But it's always a work in progress, but I enjoy it. And I think he would say he enjoys it too. It's been fun.
And as your point guard, you're probably just harder on him because I think that's just how coaches are.
Yeah. My point guard's got to be the guy that's smarter than me.
Yeah. You just can't have a son that's smarter than you too. Jordan, you have one?
Yeah, just, a lot of people that maybe don't follow high school basketball as closely maybe don't know that, there was a stretch between 2011 and 2016 where, Barron won at least 15 games every year, regional title, multiple conference titles. And this year being 4-1 early, all conference wins. Is it been kind of exciting to kind of see, led by your son, led by the Liberties, kind of a resurgence in Barron basketball?
Yeah, losing's not fun. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not fun. And we had a really great stretch. Those years that you were referring to, we had kids that played a lot of ball, and they had really great basketball IQs, and they worked. The chemistry was really, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were successful because of a lot of that, and they were the kind of kids that I really enjoyed coaching, where they competed every day, and no fault from anybody else. We ran into a stretch where maybe one of those components were missing with some of our athletes, and we really struggled. And we're in the bottom half of the conference for a few years, and like that's when Carter says, he goes, "I'm tired of losing. I want to win my last year," and to be able to do some of the things that we're doing right now with these guys, there's some flashbacks. It makes you smile again and makes you enjoy it a little bit more. But we also got to just kind of be a little more realistic. Coming into January, we're going to face the tougher teams in our conference, and we got to see where we're made out of now. That's the exciting part. We talk about it every day at practice now. We get to compete with the best.
Right. Looking at your schedule, two real road tests with Cameron and Northwestern coming up. The Heart of North is a me and Nygard have known for a long time. It's a very good, very competitive conference for basketball and for football, but basketball especially. What did Cameron and Northwestern present that you're going to have to prioritize and kind of strategize for?
Well, with Cameron, first of all, they've had those three seniors. Ian Payne, Austin Weiss, and Richie Murphy. Seemed like forever they've been playing for Cameron. But they make up about 53 points. The three of them combined for 53 points a game. They're very talented. They can shoot lights out. Austin just scored 1,000 points just earlier in the season. But they provide, Coach LaValle does a really good job of applying a lot of pressure defensively with his run and jump, and he comes at you from a variety of different areas on the floor. But then he puts more pressure on you on offense, and he gives the ball, and he lets Richie just go. And he makes some unbelievable decisions. He's a really good point guard. So that's tough. But I think we match up okay with him. You know, we have enough guys. You know, we can put 5 guys on the floor that can all dribble, and we should be able to handle that pressure. It's just making sure that we can, you know, control our breathing and our heart rate a little bit when that all comes, and make the right decisions. And hopefully we can make the shots and give them a game. That's what we're hoping for. Give them the game, last 3 minutes. Maybe, you know, we'll see what happens.
Right. How have the kids bought in? I know that from my, you know, short time coaching, and Nygaard's coached quite a bit longer than me, but getting kids to believe they're good enough to win big games is a huge step. Like you mentioned, Carter already having kind of that grit, kind of that want to. Have you seen the other guys, you know, including your son, kind of start to believe that this team could do some things? Yeah,
we've taken on Carter's personality a lot. I mean, he talks to the kids a lot about what we need to do and how we can do it, and believe in what you're doing. Shoot that shot. You know, don't question it. Shoot it. You know, we give them the green light to be able to do it. And now we've got a good group of juniors that have been somewhat successful through their youth program. And then the sophomores that are playing with us now too, they've been fairly successful in their youth program, and they know they can compete. You know, they've got a little bit of I tailor it a little bit, but they got a little bit of a swagger with them, making sure that we do it appropriately, of course. But they think they can compete in this conference, and they want to do something special. Yeah. We'll see if we can. You know, we're kind of limited on size. That kind of hurts us sometimes. You know, after Carter, who's about 6'3", then after that, you know, if we stretch the measure a little bit, maybe we've got another guy at 6'1", but I'm not sure about that.
Right. How has navigating this year been for you as an athletic director? You're an athletic director, correct?
Yeah. I teach business information as well as as the athletic director here. The fall really wasn't that bad. It worked out okay. We made the adjustments that we need to do to make sure everybody's safe with the fans and players and coaches and whoever walks into the building. But now the winter, it just seems like there's more teams in the beginning of the season that were out because of COVID-related issues. And to try to find teams, you know, we're finding teams that, you know, 24 hours before the day before, and then finding officials, workers, and all that kind of stuff. It's stressful, but I kind of like that high pace kind of a stuff, if that makes sense. Just to give the kids an opportunity to play, because these kids want to play. I mean, I'll go back to when we were allowed to get into the gym in the summer. July 2nd was our first day that we could go. And that was the best day of my life, as well as the kids. I mean, they were so ready to play. They listened to everything I said, and they worked their tails off. And it was just, it's been fun. It's been fun in that aspect. So we try to do what we can to allow the kids to have these experiences that they've missed.
Right.
So that means it's a little stressful sometimes on my end, and I lose a little more hair. I guess it is what it is, you know?
Yeah, that was going to be my question for you too, because it's, you know, it's one thing I think when you have to try to wear one hat and do one job, but like you said, you know, you're scrambling to find games, and that might be when you're wearing your coaching hat, but then all the administrative stuff that needs to happen to make that game happen, you're all involved in that too. So, you know, that was one thing I mentioned to Coach Sargent. It's like, as a football coach, the amount of times that you would read that a team was looking for an opponent for tomorrow. Yeah. And that's just not how football coaches work. As a basketball coach, I mean, you can maybe deal with that the next day or 2 days later, but not ideally. Like you try to avoid that type of thing. Do you think that these types of things happening will change kind of what the norm is for the future?
Like what do you mean by that? Give me some detail. What do you refer to?
Just like, you know, and I think more like, you know, we're in high school, you can change your schedule for the next year. You know, when you look at like college programs and the years out that teams are, you know, trying to set things up. But, you know, if you're having a really good season and a team that's not on your regular season schedule is having a really good season, and maybe it would you both find a reason that it would benefit both schools for that game to happen, that it would be something that you would maybe try to slide in.
I would think, one thing you have to do is like leading into the season, both the boys and girls, we had our 24 games already. Okay.
Right.
We had that all set up and we knew what was going on. Now, let's say there's a snow day and you miss a game and you can't make it up, or in this situation, there were so many cancellations because of COVID that you were looking and be able to make it. Kids wanted to play. My girls coach said, we had a game on Friday and I don't care if I play on Saturday and I don't even know who we play. Just if you can get it, schedule it. So I think you'll find teams being more willing to make that change because it's probably going to be the best for their program. If they can find more of a team that matches them a little bit better or challenges them, I think they're going to try to do that if they have the leeway.
Fast forwarding to the end of the season. So, I would get a lot of the information as a coach from, just what the WIA planned to do. And it was really kind of standard every season. What do you think, or how is it set up for the basketball season to progress towards the end of the year?
I think, they haven't told us. Okay. They just told us that they want to plan on having some type of a tournament. I vision it to be something like what they did with volleyball, where each division was at a different site for their state tournament. Instead of bringing all of, like the Kohl Center was fantastic. I mean, you've been there as well as I have. And it's just great basketball to watch, sit there and watch everything. But I think what they'll try to do is, let's say Division III, you're at this site in, let's say, Oshkosh North. And everybody, the 4 teams are going to come there for state. And try to make that stay as less as possible. So whether that's, playing back-to-back and being done with, however it goes, I'm not real sure. I'm not real sure if they have a concrete plan yet. Things change a lot. I mean, for instance, we, probably 1 week before the season started, we got our COVID information that we had to deal with for the winter. So it's a lot of stuff on the fly. And even like if I'm just jumping and putting my AD hat on, like for wrestling, they started the season with all you could do is just do a duel. Okay. And now we just got an email at the end of December here stating that starting in January 4th, they're going to allow us to do tries or quads now. And so that changes our entire schedule, and we're just trying to make things work. And actually what we're doing is something like the Heart of the North. We're finding some teams from the middle border that had a duel on the same day. And we're bringing all 4 teams together and let them get 3 more matches in. So there'll be a lot of changes even now until the end of February, I do believe.
Do you anticipate there being the seating meetings? Obviously, I don't know that coaches would all get together in a small room like we did not that long ago. But do you anticipate that the region, that there'll still be probably 12 teams or 13 teams or whatever it was, and try to palm that out? Similar to
Yeah, I do. I know the WIA is really looking at electronic seating, and this year we have to record all of our games into the WIA database. But they also mentioned that they're going to use it as a trial. They're still going to do like face-to-face, or it's probably going to be over technology with the seating aspect, and then seeing how well it compares up to what the WIA database would have had. And I do believe because of all the cancellations and what's going on, they won't do the electronic seating. They'll probably do that the following year, I have a feeling, and see what happens with that.
Yeah, that's similar, I think, to what football did, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart way to do things, but I think we've all experienced, in college football, when you let computers try to decide teams, and then it's like, how much of a difference does, the margin of victory matter? Do you want teams running up scores? It's like, it's so hard to value things correctly. And even as humans getting in a room, how do you value things? And then to stick them into a computer. I mean, I like it. I'm into technology, but I think the way that it's worked out, that this is going to be a trial year, makes a whole lot of sense as we go forward.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think there's a way that everybody's going to love it, whether it's electronic or whether it's face-to-face. Back when we started to really go into when we combined into one big subsectional. I try, because of our location here at Barron, try to get as many of the middle border schools as we could, and most of the time, we played everybody in the heart of the North, and in our seeding meeting, maybe it was like maybe Prescott and Ellsworth that I didn't play. And then, hey, you beat me, it's done. At least I had a lot of head-to-head competition. And that's what I always try to do in our non-conference, is try to get the head-to-head as best as we can on who we might be in our subsectional. And then I think it's fair.
That's what I did too. I mean, obviously St. Clair Falls joining the heart of the North. That was one other team, but we played them. We played you. We played Spooner. I didn't want to make the drive to Maple every other year if I could help it. And Bloomer and Elk Mound, I mean, they were just kind of teams that we didn't play against. But that was what when we looked at the schedule, I said, hey, let's see, so we know exactly how we rank in here. And these are the teams that we have to beat to be regional champs. So why not try to get them on your regular season schedule?
Yeah, and that's one thing that I'm really going to miss starting next year, because we're bringing Ashland into our conference. And so we have 20 conference games next year, which just gives me 4 non-conference. And I think it's only going to be for a year or two, because we might have some Heart of the North schools moving. They might be going to the Clover Belt. So then we'll have some fluctuation. But for a year or two, it's going to be – I'm not going to like it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that would be difficult. I think we're pretty fortunate in the middle border having 7 of our teams being in the same region. And aside from New Richmond, it's like we're playing all non-conference games, and we're pretty fortunate, I think, where we are to have a lot of options. The farther north you get, though,
yes,
it's far more difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Jordan, you have anything else to ask? Sorry, I kind of took that one over.
No, that's good. I'm good. It's been fun to listen and learn.
One thing, and I'm just jumping topics here a little bit, but when we were on stay at home in September, or in the spring, I can't remember who actually did it, but they were starting to bring a lot of these virtual clinics, off of Zoom and stuff like that. So I started to, sign up for every free one that I could possibly get. And I really got into listening to more of the European coaches and seeing the style that they play and how quickly, because I didn't feel the last couple of years with our kids that our decision-making was very good. We were too slow. We just didn't recognize things. And I probably did a very poor job of coaching that. And certainly learning new ways of creating the small games and that advantage, and getting kids to actually learning how to read. And that's where we're at right now. We're getting to that point where the ball's not sticking in our hands as long, because we're trying to read before the ball even before it's passed to me. And I think that helps us out. But it's been fun listening to different people and to go through with some of those aspects of it. You're never too old to learn. And I had to learn a lot there. And I think with this group, it helps out a lot with the skill set that we have. What you're doing here, talking about basketball, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, the European game is a much, it's basketball, but with you have the trapezoidal lane, you have the different rules in the backcourt, like when the ball goes out of bounds, it doesn't have to be touched by an official. But
I'm looking at some of the concepts that they have and how they run some stuff and some of their actions.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot more like dribble handoffs. We'll call it a get, so we can get ourselves our guards to get going. We pass to maybe Carter, and then we'll go downhill to try to get the ball and be able to attack. And that'll also give sometimes Carter an option to take. And we run some different options out of that, what I think the kids like. And trying to even look at the two-sided fast break, with the 2 guys on one side. We haven't done that before. I've always been traditional with the trailer coming down and going high, low, and different things like that. But then I realized we don't have another big guy. We just got Carter. So we started to play off on the perimeter a little and then play off of Carter with that. And it seems to work to our skill set a little bit. We'll see what happens as we get going on, and hopefully we get a little bit better with it. But it's been fun learning new stuff. It really has.
Yeah, that's super cool. And it's nice that games are streamed. I see so far just one of your games is listed on Wiz Sports as having been streamed, but hopefully there's some more that Jordan and I can try to get on our devices.
Yeah, I just need to maybe communicate with Mr. Miller a little bit more and tell him where we're streamed at. And we do have everything streamed, and we're doing everything going through that process. And that's one thing, like as an AD, we didn't stream anything. None of these guys did. All of the streaming stuff is totally new for us. And some of us had the technology and some of us didn't. And trying to figure all that stuff out is we're doing it on the fly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks a ton for jumping on here. Like I tell everybody, we'll hopefully later in the season we can catch back up and see how things have progressed through the season. And best of luck to you as the season progresses.
Jeremy, Jordan, hey, I really appreciate you letting me come on. I enjoy talking hoops, so thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here.